Hey YouTube, welcome to Darkmoon Metals Introduction to Stick Welding Part 2. In the first part of this series, we covered all the safety aspects as far as your personal clothing, your protective gear, your welding helmet, and what to look for in the area that you're going to be welding in as far as potential hazards. In today's video, Dana and I are going to take you through the steps to get set up and ready to start stick welding. If you already have your own stick welder or have access to one, great. If you don't and you're looking to purchase your first machine, there are a few things you're going to want to take into consideration before you go shopping. The first one is, do you want something that's portable or do you want a shop model like this one where you don't have to worry about lifting it in and out of a truck? Do you want something that's 110 or 220? What type of power requirements are you going to need? Usually depends on the level of welding that you're going to be doing. The third is cost, and that is the thing that hits you the hardest when you're trying to find these machines. They can range in price from a few $100s to a few $1,000s. Now, me personally, I went with a Miller Synchrowave 200 power source. Now, this particular power source allows me to not only stick weld, but I can TIG weld with it as well. So this machine just happened to fit all of my needs, and it fit them very well. If you do go out and buy a stick welding machine or any other type of welder, there are a lot of guys out on the internet right now, and especially on YouTube, that are saying go to Harbor Freight, buy these little, flux core MIG welders and little buzz box power supplies for your arc welders. You truly do get what you pay for. There are cases where these machines have literally burst into flames, they've gotten too hot, they don't really have a good duty cycle, and they're not built as well as machines in this country. There are 4 major manufacturers of welding equipment in this country, or at least 4 brand names of welding equipment that I find to be very, very trustworthy, and they're a very good quality unit. My personal pick, obviously, is Miller. I've been welding with Miller for quite a while now. Miller also bought out my old favorite brand, which was Hobart. I have an old Hobart Beta MIG 200, and that was the machine that I first started learning to weld on. And it is still a very good, solid machine, and it's over 26 years old, and it hasn't failed us yet. The only thing I had to replace on it was the MIG torch. Lincoln Electric is another very popular brand out there, and they're a very durable machine. In fact, they're known for their engine-driven systems. Really, really good, high-quality units there. And the last manufacturer that I'm going to recommend is ESAB. ESAB was known primarily for a lot more of their industrial use, but just recently, even the guys at Orange County Choppers redid their entire shop, and they're loaded with ESABs now. So if you stick with a name brand, well-known manufacturer, and you get a decent machine, it will treat you well, and it'll last for years to come. Once you get your arc welder hooked up and ready to go, you just need a few more inexpensive items before you can truly start arc welding. One of the items is this chipping hammer. Now, chipping hammers come in a variety of shapes and sizes. This just happens to be mine. The chipping hammer is primarily used to remove the protective covering of slag that accumulates over the weld puddle. The next, you're going to want to get some type of soapstone and a soapstone holder. These only cost a few dollars and will prove invaluable during the arc welding process. You'll see me using them throughout the video. A couple of different sizes of metal wire brushes. Now, these guys are necessary for cleaning your metal and making sure you have a decent welding surface before you start the arc. Cleanliness is next to godliness, I've heard many people say, and in welding it's not that far from the truth. The cleaner your material, the better your weld will be. Next item on the list is a couple of different size C-clamps. C-clamps are extremely useful in holding your work and material stationary and solidly while you conduct your welding process. Now, this one is optional. This takes the place of the wire brushes. This is an angle grinder. Now, this particular one happens to be a 13 amp model. It's a 4-inch grinder, and it has saved me a lot of time and elbow grease. You can use flap wheels, stone wheels, or wire wheels on this particular grinder. Unless you're planning on welding on your garage floor, you're going to need some kind of a metal work surface, a heavy-duty workbench. Now, this particular tabletop was a salvage find. A machine shop was getting rid of it, and this is about 1.5 inches thick of cast metal. It was simply machined off on the top to create a flat work surface, and it has made an awesome welding table. Now, if you can't find something like this, there are a lot of other options. You just want to make sure that you have a decently thick piece of metal. Ultimately, welders end up making their own welding tables most of the time. Now, if you have a thin metal table, it's better than nothing. It's definitely better than wood bench. You can use things like bricks or pieces of channel iron or tube stock to elevate the piece that you're welding off of your work surface. That'll help keep your thinner metal tabletops from distorting. Now, if you're like me and ground your earthen clamp to the table itself, bricks are not going to work. Bricks will not allow the current to flow through them to your workpiece to create the arc. So you're going to want to definitely get some kind of channel iron or other type of square stock that'll hold your piece over the work surface and help dissipate the heat. To get started, the first thing that we're going to do is connect our ground clamp and our electrode holder to the machine. Now, the one thing I want to point out about the electrode holder, sometimes referred to as a stinger, this does not have any type of trigger. As soon as your electrode comes into contact with your work surface, the arc starts. So whenever you have this in the machine and you have an electrode in the holder, it's live. If it comes into contact with the work surface, it will arc. So I want you to be aware of that. If you have your electrode in the holder, make sure you have your welding helmet on and you're intending to weld. Even if you want to pause for a few seconds or you want to chip off some slag, just drop it out of the electrode holder and put it back in when you're ready to go. I have this set up right now with electrode negative. Now, I'll get into polarities in future videos. Now, some machines, if you want to reverse the polarity, which basically means you either make your electrode positive or make your electrode negative, what you would do is switch the position of your electrode holder with your ground, and that would reverse the polarity. This particular machine, you don't have to worry about doing that. In this current configuration, this is electrode negative. To make it electrode positive, all I need to do is turn it to electrode positive. I can leave my leads exactly as they are. Read the instruction manual that comes with your machine, and it'll tell you what kind of machine you have and how to change the polarities. Okay, YouTube, here is the first weld I have run with my machine since I bought it. I did a little bit of reading and I switched my polarity, so I had a positive electrode, negative ground. This is the bead that I ran. I cleaned half of it off. This has the slag removed. This still has the slag on it, but if you do a good weld, the slag shouldn't take too much to come off the weld. You can see it just kind of chipping away there. Now, I cut this piece. Let me back out just a little bit. Oops, wrong way. I cut this piece of channel iron to exactly 8 inches. And the reason I did that is with these rods, this particular electrode, I could expect to get a decent weld bead that's 7 inches long. Now, you don't have to cut your stock. You can just draw lines every 8 inches. But if you can get a nice weld bead that's 7 inches long, it helps with your travel speed. So you're using your electrode and you're moving it at the proper rate. Now, this is what your electrode should look like when you're done with it. This is a stub. It's completely used up, and you should be able to see the numbers on the electrode. If you've burned the numbers, you've gone too far. Now, some people might think that's wasteful, but you have to keep in mind this arc can be 7,000 degrees or more, and as you're moving your hand towards that, the heat is going to be increasing. Also, the insulation that's on your stinger or your electrode holder will start to deteriorate, and you don't want to get your electrode holder that hot. So this is considered to be a good weld, and this is what you want to look for the end of your electrode. Now, with this particular plate, you can keep on putting pass after pass after pass after pass and keep practicing on it. And once you're done with that, you can even go in between your welds and just fill them in. So one piece of metal like this will get you a decent amount of practice. Now, it's going to take you a little while to learn how to actually start the arc. When you start the arc, and it's kind of hard to see behind the curtain, but you basically scrape it like you would a match. And when you do that, you should see a little bit of an arc. And once you get your distance down, you'll see the electrode moving and the metal will start to flow, and just start and continue your weld bead until you have your stub. Well, it's not as straight as I would like, but this is the first weld bead that I have run on a stick welder since I left school, and that was about a year and a half ago. Now, you have enough room in here to keep on running beads, and it's a really, really good way to practice just by running beads, running beads, running beads. When you get to the point where you're comfortable with that, run a bead for about 4 inches and then stop, and then start again. And what that'll do is that'll get you to the point where you can blend in your weld beads. Starting and stopping is actually one of the harder things to learn once you've gotten your beads down. Once you've got your starts and stops, then what you do is you come in and you try to lay a bead right on top of your first one. Not dead center, but right on the edge. And what that'll do is that'll make it look like one wide weld bead, and I will be covering that in another video. If you're in a construction type of trade and you've seen people put buildup of weld on like loader buckets and skid steers, that's what they do. They put overlapping beads so the crowns of the bead, the top part, touches, and that's how they build up the thickness on those loader buckets, and I will be showing you that in later videos. Alright YouTube, that's basic bead on plate. So the only thing that's left to do is to get out and start practicing. The one thing that I did want to kind of touch base on, now that we're zoomed back out and you can see the full table, now I shut my welder off so there's no current going through this at all. When you start, you will fuse your electrode to your work surface. It's gonna happen. The best welders started off the same way. I must have done it 1,000 times. Now, what you do, once you fuse it and you feel that stuck to your plate and your arc stopped, what's going to happen is this electrode is going to start to heat up, and you're basically going to fry out the electrode, and it's not good for the machine either. So what you do is just release the electrode holder. You pull the electrode right off the stinger by opening up the jaws. You can break off your rod. If you didn't mess up the flux on the bottom, you can continue using that rod. Now, in regards to the electrode itself, sometimes you'll find that there are cracks and flakes and pieces of the flux missing. If you find electrodes like that in your supply, just get rid of them. It's not even worth it. When the flux is gone, you lose the ability to create your shielding gas, and it just becomes 10 times harder to maintain the arc and create a good quality weld bead. And since you're practicing and you're trying to improve yourself, you're going to want to use decent electrodes. Now, what I said before about Harbor Freight equipment and things like that, not getting name brand welders, at Harbor Freight, it's a really decent source for electrodes, especially if you're just starting out. It's really cost effective, and you're going to be blowing through electrodes like crazy if you're anything like me. So yes, they are a lower end electrode, but they will work really good for practice. So other than that, we're going to be moving on to part 3. In the mood for some more filming?
I think so.
All right. Well, I'm Jeff.
And I'm Dana.
And this is Darkmoon Metals, the end of Introduction to Stick Welding Part 2. We'll see you at Part 3.